All right, so earlier we spoke about effective listening, and now we're going to be overcoming some of the barriers that can affect active listening, active/effective listening. Now, we need to understand that every single time we're about to interact with anybody, there are potential factors that can cause barriers. And a barrier is anything that interrupts the flow or the effectiveness of listening. We all agree with that?
Yes.
Great. So therefore, we're going to be looking at some factors, some barriers, and the ones that we have on the board are you're going to read them through with me. So the first one is what? Noise. And the noise can be vehicular or people. The same way the car is passing by or the truck earlier today, those would have been considered to be noise. All right. Next one, we have use of jargon, slangs, and acronyms. Good. Then we have language barriers. And language barrier includes, but is not limited to, accents. What else? Different languages. Talk to me, class. Talking too fast. Stuttering or having a lisp. Good. The next one that we looked at is also emotional barriers. Then we have what? Cultural barriers, which includes but are not limited to race, religion, your political views, your dress, opinions, your educational background, and socialization. Next barriers, we have physical environment. We have speakers. Next we have gender biases. Next we have prejudices. Number 10, lack of interest. 11, physical tiredness. Or 12, daydreaming. Now, I need you to understand that there is, under physical tiredness, we would call that type of barrier to be physiological. So it could be if you are stressed out. It could be that you literally have a pain, like you'd have met in an accident, and somebody's asking you to tell them where you feel the pain. Have you ever been to the doctor? And you're feeling a lot of pain and they're talking to you, but they're becoming annoyed with you because you're not talking back to them. Right, so physiological impacts can also be barriers. So we're going to be going through them, and we're going to be talking how it is that we overcome these barriers, or we solve them to an extent that we can have effective listening happening during communication. Now, this is a time when I don't want you to be writing, but I want you to be listening. We are effectively listening, Angela. Because here's the thing, I'm 100% sure that at the end of this discussion, if I ask you questions, because you were writing, you won't be able to respond to what I'm saying. And because some of you ate, I'm going to be having some of you falling asleep, which is a physiological issue already, a barrier to communication. First one, how do I overcome the issue of noise if I am going to be having a conversation and I need to actively listen? What can I do?
Remove from the location.
Remove from the location and what?
And somewhere quiet.
Good. So the first response to noise is remove from the location and find somewhere where it is
Silent.
where it is quiet, where it's more quiet. Good? So we can all jot that down. So we're going to be moving ourselves physically to somewhere where it's more quiet, or if it's a case where you're in an office space, you might want to close the door. Good. Next one in overcoming barriers is, so if you have to overcome the barrier of jargon, slangs, and acronym, How do we overcome that barrier to active listening? Ask questions. So if you're having a conversation and the speaker is using terms that you are unfamiliar with, ask the question, what does that acronym mean? When you say to somebody that I attend a Jack's River CTI, they'll ask you, what is a CTI? And then you can say community training intervention. And they may ask you, what does that mean? Because it is a jargon of the heart trust. And even the term heart trust itself is a what? It's an acronym, no so? So they will ask you and you would have to explain to them what a community training initiative is. Right? Intervention is, right? Good. Sometimes based on the age group of who you are dealing with, they're going to be using slangs. Some of the slangs don't make no sense to me. But apparently to these young people, or to the group that they're a part of, or the how they socialize, they may use certain slangs. You're not familiar with it. You may want to ask them, what does it mean? Right? I'm trying to see what was the latest slang we had in Jamaica. I don't even know. Anybody know the latest slang that we have? See? We don't have any. Great. Excellent. All right, language barriers. Now, how do we overcome barriers to effectively listen if an accent is involved? What do we do?
You use repetition.
You use repetition. Explain can you explain that?
Because some words, you have English, like you have the British,
right?
And we speak standard English, and they will say a word that is the same word like protect, and they like protect.
Okay, so so based on how thick the accent is,
yes,
words that we may be familiar with will be perhaps pronounced differently, so we can't get it. So they say letter for letter, right? So there are certain little unique ways in which they make pronunciation. And for example, like persons who watch a lot of African movies, their English is hard for me to understand sometimes because they have very deep accent. The Australians have deep accents. The Irish have deep accents. So sometimes a little bit hard for me to understand. Now, how do we overcome a barrier of different language? We use a translator, right? So if we don't know the language, we have to get someone who understands to translate for us. Great. If the person is talking too fast, what do we do? Right, so we ask them to slow their speech down. Good. And sometimes when they're talking really fast, it can be because they are very, very excited or they're very, very angry. So whenever they're emotionally charged, it will dictate how quickly they speak. All right, good? So how do we fix the issue of stuttering now? Somebody's talking to you and they're stuttering. Patience. Excellent. And we don't mock them. So because they're stuttering is a disability that they cannot dictate. It happens. Do we know anyone that stutters?
Yes.
And it takes a while to come out. And it can be very frustrating. But we ask for this time that you use patience. Oh, and one other thing that you should never do. Not because the person is stuttering means that you should finish the sentence for them. It is even more frustrating for them when you try to complete the sentences.
Coming in that sense.
Right, because you're interrupting their flow of thought. Even though they are stuttering and they're pausing and they still want to complete their sentences. So you need to exercise patience and do not become so annoyed. Like, oh my gosh. Right? Good. And as Ms. Robinson rightfully say, you don't mock them.
Don't laugh.
Or don't laugh. If they have a lisp, so persons with a lisp will call the THs sound like S, and the S's sound like THs, right? So because of that, you have to be careful. So based on the words that they would use, you want to be sure that it is what they want to say. Or if you're on the telephone with them and they're calling certain words, they want to be asking, did you mean this? Because this might sound like, you know, it comes off differently. All right, good. Let us talk about emotional barriers. What are some emotional barriers and how to overcome them? So, Kamisha, what is this talking about? Emotional barriers. What are we talking about? We speak about emotional barriers.
It's like a case where.
Can't hear a word you're saying.
Is it so it's a case where what the speaker is saying is having probably a negative effect on your emotional state.
Right.
I guess I should say how we overcome it.
So as you're, which is correct. So the speaker is saying something to you that triggers you.
Sometimes you have to disconnect yourself from what they're saying and don't take it personal.
All right. So here we go. Excellent, two excellent points. Because if somebody is accused, let us say that somebody is accused of sexually harassing someone in the workplace, and you are the supervisor who has to now deal with the issue, and the perpetrator is in front of you. Maybe a long time ago, you had a similar situation where you had a colleague who tried to touch you inappropriately. The fact that somebody is accused of the crime, even though you don't have sufficient evidence, you may start having triggers. And because the person is the one whose the finger is pointed at, you already become emotionally charged. You already call him guilty already, and your body starts to show some physical manifestation of you becoming angry. To overcome emotional barriers, you will have to do one of two things. One, if it is going to cause you to become emotionally charged, you need somebody else to be in the room who is neutral to help with the conversation. Or two, you have to ask for time to recompose yourself. So the person has started talking and you have become emotionally charged. End the conversation. I said, you know what? I'm going to ask you to come back. Let us revisit this conversation some other time. I need to compose myself. Right? Remember, we all have to be professionals at all times. If you cannot deal with a situation professionally and in its most effective way, don't go down the gully. It makes no sense. You get what I'm saying? So don't try to communicate effectively or try to resolve an issue if you know for a fact that it's going to create more harm than good, right? Good. Another barrier that we can look at is cultural barriers. And remember that culture speaks to anybody's way of life. And within Jamaica, there are subsets. So out of many one people, we have so many different races here. And every race is further broken down into different religious views. And it's further broken down into different political views. And I tell you this, based on your religious view, based on your political view, based on your educational background, it will depend on how you talk, how you interact, how you express yourself. So if you have a speaker, you and I would have listened to these daily talk shows, and you have persons coming in trying to have a conversation like with Mr. Taylor. That's what they call Dr. Taylor, or what's her name again? Mrs. Shield. And if they're going to be talking, no. Is it active listening that happens on these talk shows? Or is it competitive? I didn't tell you about competitive listening. So competitive listening is when you want to push your point and somebody must listen to what you have to say. That's competitive or combative listening. When we have this type of talk show and everybody emotion is revved up or well leveled up, how can the person who is listening, the listener, listen to the person's point of view without becoming emotionally charged as well? What can they do?
You have to listen to this before you talk.
You have to listen to what they're saying before you talk. Any other way? Think about how Miss Shields they do it, man. What Miss Shields they do?
Being open-minded.
They're open-minded. So you can't be a talk show host and be closed-minded. It don't make no sense. Because if you are closed-minded and you're entrenched in your idea, you know, everything that somebody says will come off as being offensive to you. You're always going to be defensive, right? And if you are a very defensive listener, it is not active listening. Because a part of active listening is that we are remaining neutral and we are understanding what the person is trying to say and we're asking questions. And one of the things that I enjoy about Dr. Taylor is that whenever he says, where truth comes to, where lies come to die, and something another. He has a slogan for his thing. One thing that I enjoy about him is that whenever persons come with their political view and they start blaring, he remains calm and then he asks questions.
Yeah.
And it is when he starts to ask questions and pose facts that the person starts to calm down. Dr. Taylor knows something I know about the part they do. Something about So he changes. Because what he wants to happen, he doesn't want an open fight on the show. He wants persons to actually listen and learn. And a part of communication, as we had said earlier when it comes on to teamwork, is the transmitting of information. Yeah. It's the whole idea about harmony, right? Now to overcome, so physical environment now may be another barrier. Like right now, persons are cold. And because you are so cold, it is blocking how you are participating in class. So if the room is too cold, so if the AC is too high, your body is more concentrating on keeping you warm than actually listening. If you are hungry, it's hard for you to listen because your body is telling you that you're hungry and all attention goes down to the tummy area. You see how that is interesting? So your physical environment, your physical environment, the tummy should be physiological. My apologies for that. Physical now speaks to how the room is set up. If you are placed far away from the listener, you may be disinterested in talking. So you want to pull the person closer to you, right? If the room is too cold or it is too open, you don't want to speak anything too confidential. If we're going to be asking you, if I was to ask you very personal questions in this room, would you be open to having the conversation with me? No, because it is too open and based on the type of conversation you want it to be confidential. So we solve that issue by going in a closed space to have those type of confidential conversations. If the place is too cold, we turn the heat up. If the place is too hot, we turn the heat down. So we do the opposite based on our physical environment. And seating, always remember seating. When you're having a conversation, be sure that the person is able to talk to you. They're able to see you. They're able to see your expression. Because the more they see your expression, they'll have better confidence in your ability to listen to them and to understand what they're trying to say. Speaker's distraction. Now, this is also a barrier. If the speaker is too pretty, you may be distracted. And I tell people this every single time, and I don't care. I have insurance that I buy from Sagicor, and I don't know what on there I buy. The gentleman who was selling the insurance, He was so handsome. I bought it because the guy was so handsome. I mean, he was talking to me and this was me. I was like, and he's like, you understand me? But I'm like, yeah. I don't know what I bought. But I remembered he was very, very handsome. And all of my head was like, ooh, ooh. My brain was just gone. I said, for. So, if the person is too pretty, that you feel that you're going to be distracted by them or what they have to say, you will have to stare at your shoe or find another area of focus. Right? No, it's true. If the person is too ugly, you do the same thing. You can't laugh at the person. Could just laugh a while ago. I said don't laugh at the person. Physical distraction might be the person might be skimpily clad. And you have to have a conversation. You may want to ask them to cover up. But if it is in a culture where if you should go out of the country and you go to a culture where it's so breast out the door, you cannot say I'm kind of cover up your body. No, you have to. So at this time, you have to respect that culture and be focused on what you have to do. So at this time, it's going to require that you are neutral. You have to be focused and pay attention to what it is that is being said and not the person's appearance. It may be hard, and that is the reason why there are some persons who will use the allure of a woman to get persons into certain contractual deals.
Because that's why they say sex sells.
That's why they say sex. That is why they say sex sells, and that is true. So they appease to your allurement. So they allure you to they appease you, and then this distracts you from what it is that you're supposed to discuss. So you have to be careful of that. All right. Gender biases. As Ms. Robinson had explained earlier, there are some men who believe if a woman is in front of them or in charge of doing certain activities, interactions with them will be harder. So if she's the boss of the group, it's highly likely that they will not listen to her. That's true. We agree with that? So how do we solve this issue? If you are the female and if you are the speaker and you see where your gender will create an issue in talking or listening or having an effective communication, you want to get a third party to be in the room. That might just be the best thing. Because if the speaker already starts to prejudge or starts to become emotionally charged because a woman is sitting across from he or she, then you want to ensure that there's a third party that creates some level of balance. And that is true. Men respond better to men. Yeah. Prejudices and biases, as we said earlier, if those are inexistent and it's going to create a barrier for you to communicate effectively, one of the ways to solve it is that you have to be neutral. So neutral means, which is very hard. So neutral for you means that you're going to be talking to yourself, that you need to compose yourself. You have to eliminate any prejudices that you have.
In the workplace, like some people are friends and the supervisor is friend, and like me and your friend have an argument. Sometimes it's best for somebody else to deal with the issue.
Right.
Sometimes I'm automatically being biased, because they're your friend.
Because it's your friend. That is why counselors are told that they cannot counsel friends or family. So if you have if your aunt is the best counselor in the world, she can't counsel you. Because they're right.
On your side.
You have to be more open to understand both sides of the story before you
Right. Now, when you already have prejudices or biases or preconceived idea, you have to be neutral. And you know, one of the things that persons keep telling us that we need to divorce our emotions. We cannot divorce our emotions any at all. It is impossible for you to divorce your emotions altogether. But what you can do is manage it. And you'll have to learn to be fair. So that is the reason why when you are the listener and you have to give advice, you have to learn how to be neutral. And one other thing too, giving advice too is also a barrier to effective listening. Did you know that? When somebody comes in front of you and all you are set on is to advise the person, even before the person starts to talk, that in itself is an issue. No, so you're not going to hear exactly what the person is trying to say because their intent is to advise. So even advising in itself can be a barrier to effective communication. Lack of interest. Now, lack of interest comes sometimes based on the side of the brain that you use. And you might ask how that makes sense. Engineers, scientists, they all use a different side of their brain. I think it is the left hemisphere, which is more calculating, which is more precise and detail-oriented. Persons like marketers know they use the right side of their brain, so they're more creative, and they have a shorter attention span. So if an engineering company is going to contract a marketing company to do any level of promotion for them, it is highly likely that you don't ask an engineer to be the one to represent the company. Because the moment the marketer starts to talk about all the grand things and how they're going to put the balloons out and create it to blow up in the air, all the engineer wants to ask is, how much money it's going to cost me? Do I need to do anything? So their communications are different things because their interest and their innate build-up is different. So how do you resolve an issue like this? Third party. You need somebody to be there that is able to bridge the gap for both the engineer and the marketer. And if you have two mature persons from the engineering company, they will understand their weaknesses when it comes on to how they express themselves. Right? Good. Physically tired. If you're tired, you want to sleep. If you want to sleep, you just want to sleep. You're being tired. You won't be alert. So the best way to overcome physical tiredness is to sleep. Ask the person, can we have this conversation some other time? Don't take up the phone at 9:30 if you know your bedtime is 8 o'clock. Your brain would have gotten groggy already. Don't take up the phone at 2 a.m. if you know that you're not a morning person. Mentally, you are not there. So to overcome this, ensure that you are rested, right? So you rest before you have the conversation if you are physically tired. Because when you are physically tired, all your judgment is skewed. That is the reason why you would have seen where persons who are on the ship for many days, when they come back onto land, there are certain conversations that they can't have. There are certain documents that they can't sign because they would have been disoriented. The very same way there is this thing that says if a sailor comes off the ship and he fights somebody or he kills somebody, then they're held to a different judgment than somebody else. Because while out of sea, they'll become disoriented. Right? So if the person shows any sign of disorientation, you are not the most effective of listeners. So if you had just drank several bottles of rum or Red Stripe beer, you are not the best person to be a listener right now. Don't listen to anything what anybody has to say. Don't answer to anybody. Don't have any conversation, because communication will not be effective there. Daydreaming, the last one, which is cognitive noise. They call daydreaming cognitive noise. So you can write down cognitive noise for daydreaming. Cognitive. COGNITIVE. Cognitive noise. Cognitive noise means that your mind is filled with many thoughts except what is happening in front of you. I had cognitive noise when I was looking at it. When I was talking to the insurance man. I was there daydreaming about many other things except the insurance. So I don't even know where man they sell me say. Oh Jesus, the Lord is good. Anyways, so the average person can speak up to 157 words, I suppose. And your brain can process up to 800 words per minute. So 157 words per minute. And you can mentally process up to 800 words per minute. The person is talking way slower than your mind is running. So while the person is talking to you, it is easy for your mind to start straying. So the person is talking to you, wondering to yourself, what am I going to cook for dinner later? Or when the person goes stop talk? Or what if they know something need to go home because now it's 3 o'clock time to go home? Your brain is multitasking. So the person is talking to your But they pay the insurance last 3 hours. I want to pay insurance. And you're like, but you're still smiling and nothing, you know. And this is you. Yeah. So I go to the door now. Oh, don't. Your mind strays. So the best way to overcome daydreaming or cognitive noise is that as the person talks, you are summarizing in your mind the main points that they're saying. You understand? Because remember, a part of effective communication, we said, to show that you would have been effectively listening is that you would be able to repeat main points, you're able to reflect, you're able to summarize, you're able to ask certain questions. All right, we're good to go? Good. So we understand so these 12 that we give, that I gave, they are not the entire list of barriers to effective